Everyone smiled when my father stood up during our annual family reunion. Crystal glasses clinked. My brother Daniel smirked confidently. I honestly believed Dad was finally going to thank me. For 5 years, I had quietly paid the overdue property taxes. I repaired Grandpa's old farmhouse. I even covered Dad's medical bills when his business almost collapsed. No one knew, because Dad begged me to keep it a secret. And he cleared his throat. Today, I'm officially leaving my $2.8 million family estate to my son Daniel. The room exploded into applause. Daniel laughed. Mom cried with happiness. I sat there, completely frozen. Dad slowly turned toward me. For one hopeful second, I thought he would finally tell everyone the truth. Instead, he smiled politely. Emily, thank you for helping this family. That's enough reward for someone like you. The room laughed awkwardly. My heart shattered. I stood up quietly, grabbed my purse, and started walking toward the door. Then, a loud voice stopped everyone. Grandpa William slowly stood using his cane. His hands were shaking, but his eyes had never looked stronger. He pointed directly at my father. No one leaves. Because today, I'm finally telling this family who really saved us. The room became completely silent, and my father's face instantly turned pale. I never imagined that the annual Carter family reunion would become the day my entire life changed forever. Every summer, relatives from all across the United States gathered at my father's beautiful lakeside estate in Vermont. It was supposed to be a celebration of family, laughter, and memories. Instead, it became the stage where I was publicly humiliated by the people I had sacrificed everything to protect. My name is Emily Carter, and for years I believed that love meant giving without expecting anything in return. I worked 2 jobs, postponed my dreams, and quietly rescued my family from financial disasters they never admitted existed. Whenever my father needed money to save his struggling real estate business, I wired it without hesitation. When my brother Daniel crashed another expensive sports car or buried himself in gambling debts, my father begged me to help because, according to him, family always comes first. I believed every word. What I didn't know was that loyalty without respect eventually becomes exploitation. The reunion looked perfect from the outside. Luxury cars filled the driveway, children played near the lake, and expensive catering covered the backyard with elegant decorations. Everyone smiled as if we were the happiest family in America. Daniel walked around greeting everyone like he already owned the estate. He wore a designer suit, an expensive watch, and the same arrogant smile I had seen my entire life. Nobody knew that almost everything he owned had been paid for by someone else. They all believed he was a successful businessman because my father never stopped praising him. Meanwhile, I quietly arranged flowers, greeted guests, and helped the catering staff because that was always my role, the invisible daughter who solved problems while everyone else accepted the applause. Just before dinner, my father tapped his glass with a silver spoon and asked everyone to gather around. Nearly 50 relatives formed a circle around him. My mother stood proudly beside him while Daniel crossed his arms with a confident grin that suggested he already knew what was about to happen. My grandfather William remained seated in his wheelchair near the fireplace, silently watching every face in the room. Although he rarely spoke anymore, his eyes noticed everything. I smiled nervously, hoping my father might finally acknowledge the years I had spent protecting our family from bankruptcy. Instead, he reached into his jacket, unfolded a legal document, and proudly announced that his entire estate, including the $2.8 million lake house, investment properties, and family business, would belong solely to Daniel. Thunderous applause erupted across the room. Daniel hugged my father while relatives congratulated him. I forced myself to smile, even though my heart felt like it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. For several seconds, I couldn't hear anything except the sound of my own heartbeat. My relatives surrounded Daniel, shaking his hand and praising him as if he had earned every dollar through hard work. "Congratulations, son," one uncle said. "Your father made the right choice." Daniel looked straight at me with a smug smile, raised his glass, and said loudly, "I guess Dad always knew who deserved to carry on the Carter legacy." A few cousins laughed, and although they didn't realize how deeply those words cut, they felt like knives. I lowered my eyes, refusing to let anyone see the tears forming. After everything I had sacrificed, I had become nothing more than an invisible guest in my own family. Then my father slowly turned toward me. For one hopeful second, I believed he was finally going to tell everyone the truth, that I had secretly paid the overdue property taxes on the lake house, covered his business loans, and even mortgaged my own apartment to keep the family company from collapsing during the recession. Instead, he smiled politely and said, "Emily, you've always been such a helpful daughter. Thank you for supporting this family. Your kindness is worth more than money." The room erupted in polite applause, but all I heard was the sound of my dignity being stripped away. Kindness didn't pay back the hundreds of thousands of dollars I had sacrificed. Kindness didn't return the years I had spent working late nights while Daniel enjoyed luxury vacations in Europe and drove brand new sports cars. I quietly stood up from my chair, picked up my purse, and walked toward the front door without saying a word. No one tried to stop me. Most of them were too busy celebrating Daniel's inheritance. Just as I reached for the doorknob, a firm voice echoed across the silent room. "Sit down." It was Grandpa William. Everyone froze. My grandfather hadn't spoken more than a few sentences at family gatherings in almost a year. Slowly, he pushed himself to his feet using his wooden cane. His hands trembled with age, but his voice was stronger than anyone expected. "Nobody leaves," he said calmly. "Not until this family hears the truth they've been avoiding for 5 years." The celebration instantly turned into confusion. My father's smile disappeared. Daniel looked nervous for the first time that evening. My mother whispered, "Dad, please, this isn't the time." But Grandpa ignored her completely. He looked directly at me and said, "Emily, come back." I hesitated for a moment before slowly walking into the room again. Then Grandpa reached inside the old leather briefcase beside his chair and carefully placed a thick stack of envelopes, bank statements, and legal documents onto the dining table. The sound of the papers hitting the wood echoed through the silent room. Everyone stared at the pile in confusion. Grandpa looked straight at my father. "Robert," he said, "would you like to tell everyone where the money came from when your company was about to be seized by the bank? Or should I?" My father's face instantly turned pale. Tiny beads of sweat formed on his forehead despite the cool evening air. Daniel glanced nervously between Grandpa and Dad before forcing a laugh. "This has to be some kind of misunderstanding," he said. Grandpa didn't even look at him. Instead, he picked up the first bank statement and raised it high enough for everyone to see. "5 years ago," he began, "this family wasn't rich. We were 48 hours away from losing everything. The banks had rejected Robert. Investors walked away. The Carter name was finished." The room fell completely silent. Then Grandpa held up another document. "The person who saved this family wasn't Daniel." He paused, letting every pair of eyes settle on me. "It was Emily." Gasps spread across the room as confused relatives turned toward me. My father closed his eyes, knowing the secret he had hidden for years was finally about to destroy the perfect image he had built. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the grandfather clock sounded deafening. Every relative stared at me as if they were seeing me for the first time. Daniel's confident smile vanished, replaced by a look of disbelief. My father took a step toward Grandpa and whispered, "Dad, please don't do this." But Grandpa shook his head. "No, Robert," he said firmly. "You've lied long enough." He opened the first envelope and removed a certified bank statement. Holding it high for everyone to see, he continued, 5 years ago, when Robert's real estate company was drowning in debt, every bank refused to lend him another dollar. The Carter family was 2 days away from losing this estate, the vacation cabin, and every investment property." He placed the document on the table. Then someone transferred $480,000 into Robert's account. A wave of whispers swept through the room. Grandpa picked up another document. Everyone assumed Robert found a secret investor. He looked directly at me. There was no investor. It was Emily. Several relatives gasped. One of my aunts covered her mouth in shock. Daniel laughed nervously. "That's impossible. Emily doesn't have that kind of money." Grandpa nodded slowly. She didn't. She sold her apartment. She emptied her retirement savings. She even borrowed against her future salary. The color drained from Daniel's face. My mother burst into tears. I wanted to disappear. I had never wanted recognition. I only wanted my family to survive. Grandpa continued before anyone could interrupt. Robert promised Emily that one day, when the business recovered, he would repay every dollar and publicly tell the family the truth. He turned toward my father. Did you keep that promise? My father couldn't answer. His silence said everything. Then Grandpa opened another envelope. This one is even worse. Inside was a folder filled with canceled checks, wire transfers, and handwritten notes. For the last 5 years, every time Daniel got himself into trouble, whether it was gambling debts, failed business ventures, or expensive lawsuits, Emily secretly paid the bills because Robert begged her to protect the family's reputation. The room exploded with shocked whispers. One cousin looked directly at Daniel. You told everyone your business was successful. Another uncle frowned. So, your luxury lifestyle was paid for by your sister? Daniel slammed his hand on the table. That's enough. You don't know the whole story. Grandpa looked at him without fear. Ido. And I'm not finished. He reached into the bottom of the briefcase and pulled out one final sealed envelope. Unlike the others, it carried the logo of one of New York's largest law firms. I've been waiting 5 years to open this. Every eye in the room fixed on the envelope. My father's hands began to shake. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Grandpa slowly broke the seal. The lawyer told me to reveal this only when I believed the Carter family had forgotten the meaning of honesty. He unfolded the papers, adjusted his glasses, and smiled faintly. What I'm about to read will decide who truly owns everything. The entire room held its breath. Grandpa slowly unfolded the legal document and looked around the room before speaking. 3 years ago, after watching everything that happened, I changed my will. I wanted to see whether this family valued honesty more than money. He placed the document on the table. Robert, you believed you could erase Emily's sacrifices. Daniel, you believed wealth made you worthy. Today, both of you were wrong. The family lawyer, who had quietly been standing near the entrance, stepped forward and confirmed every word. He explained that Grandpa had legally transferred the Carter estate, his investment portfolio, and the family trust into a new arrangement months earlier. The only person who could inherit everything was the one who had protected the family without expecting anything in return. Then he smiled at me. Emily Carter, according to William Carter's legally registered will, you are now the sole owner of the Carter estate, the family trust, and all remaining assets. The room fell silent. Daniel jumped to his feet. This is a joke. She manipulated Grandpa, he shouted. The lawyer calmly handed him copies of the documents. These papers were signed, witnessed, and registered months ago. There is nothing to challenge. My father's shoulders dropped. For the first time, he looked at me with genuine regret. Emily, I'm sorry, he whispered. I looked into his eyes and realized something important. An apology could never return the years I had lost, the dreams I had sacrificed, or the pain of being treated like I didn't matter. I walked over to Grandpa, hugged him tightly, and thanked him for believing in me when no one else did. Then I turned back to my family. I don't want revenge, I said calmly. I wanted respect. I wanted the truth. Money never mattered to me, but honesty should have mattered to all of you. Without another word, I announced that I would sell the estate, use part of the money to ensure Grandpa lived comfortably for the rest of his life, donate a significant amount to charities that help struggling families, and start a scholarship in my grandmother's name for hardworking students who had been overlooked, just as I once had been. Months later, Grandpa passed away peacefully, proud that justice had finally been done. My father tried many times to rebuild our relationship. Daniel lost the luxury lifestyle he had taken for granted and was finally forced to earn his own living. Some relatives apologized, while others quietly disappeared from my life. As for me, I finally found something far more valuable than an inheritance. I found peace. And I learned that the greatest revenge isn't humiliating the people who underestimated you. It's building a life so successful and fulfilling that they can never ignore your worth again.